Good evening and welcome to CYC News for the 24th of February 2018 and the 18th of Amshir 1734 AM. I'm Mira Gerges. In today's headlines, over 24 dead as ISIS claims attack on Shiite militia in Iraq. Latest Kurdish alliance complicates relationship with US. Search for Iran plane crash wreckage ongoing. Swastikas drown on Polish embassy. Polish minister supports call for Polocaust museum. Walking while counting backwards can help diagnose dementia. US win women's ice hockey gold for first time since 1998. But first to Iraq, where ISIS has claimed responsibility for a deadly attack on a Shiite militia group near the city of Hawija last Sunday. An ambush that left more than 24 slain. It was the deadliest attack against Iraq's Shiite-led popular mobilization units since the country's forces regained Hawija from the terror group in October. At least 27 PMU fighters died in the night assault, southwest of Kirkuk, when dozens of ISIS militants attacked several PMU military checkpoints on the highway. The PMU, an independent military force of about 110,000 fighters, has been at the forefront of the fight against ISIS in Iraq. The group said it plans to respond with determination to end the presence of ISIS criminal organization completely in the country. Iraqi Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi ordered the punishment of the perpetrators and said the attack was carried out by sleeper cells and terrorist pockets. His comments were made in a statement released by his office on Monday. In December, the Baghdad government declared victory over the terror group, announcing the end of 3 years of battles across the country. But the group is still able to carry out powerful strikes. ISIS also claimed responsibility for a deadly attack last month in Baghdad. According to the Iraqi Ministry of Health, at least 27 people were killed and 100 injured on January 15 in a double suicide bombing in the center of the capital. To Syria now. And adding to the country's many rival factions, a new alliance appears to have been forged between pro-government forces and Kurdish militias. According to Syrian news agency SANA last Monday, forces loyal to the Syrian government were deployed to the Kurdish-held region of Afrin within hours to help defend a month-long offensive by Turkey. The move appears to be the result of an agreement between the Syrian regime and Kurdish forces in Afrin. The groups are expected to unite against a Turkish offensive launched last month against the People's Protection Units in Afrin. Ankara views the YPG as a terrorist group linked to a Kurdish insurgency inside Turkey. Further complicating matters, the YPG is also the backbone of the United States-backed Syrian Democratic Forces, who are critical in the war against ISIS in Syria. If reports of the deal are confirmed, it would mean allies of the US will be fighting alongside allies of President Bashar al-Assad's regime, which the US opposes. It was not immediately clear where or what type of forces the Syrian regime is deploying, although Kurdish official Badran Jia Kurd said army troops would be deployed along the border, based on an agreement between Damascus and Syrian Kurdish fighters. The search for the wreckage of a plane that crashed in Iran, killing all 65 people on board, remains ongoing, a day after the incident state TV has reported. State media retracted earlier reports last Monday, claiming the crash site of the Iranian Aseman aircraft had been located. According to state-run IRNA, a Red Crescent official was quoted, saying there was no reliable news that the crashed aircraft had been located. Bad weather had thwarted a recovery mission last Sunday, when a rescue helicopter was forced to turn back. It was not immediately clear if search and rescue teams were able to reach the crash site the following day. The Aseman Airlines plane was flying from Tehran to the southwestern city of Yasuj when it disappeared 50 minutes into the flight. The flight, which departed at 7:55 a.m. local time, crashed in Kohengen village, authorities told Iran's Fars news agency. Earlier reports said 66 people had died in the crash, but the airline confirmed one would-be passenger did not board the flight. 20 search and rescue teams and a drone were deployed in the aftermath of the crash. To Israel now, where Poland's embassy in Tel Aviv was smeared with swastikas last Sunday, a day after Polish Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki caused outrage by claiming Jews were among the perpetrators of the Holocaust. Profanities were scrawled against a notice board outside the embassy, and a swastika had been drawn on the entrance gate. Israeli police have opened an investigation into the incident. Morawiecki's comment at a security conference in Munich last Saturday prompted a fresh wave of anger. Replying to an Israeli journalist when questioned about whether a person could be imprisoned for claiming they were Polish collaborators in the Holocaust. Reuters reported Morawiecki as saying, "Of course it's not going to be punishable, not going to be seen as criminal, to say that there were Polish predators, as there were Jewish predators, as there were Russian predators, as there were Ukrainian, not only German predators." The comments sparked an outcry from Israeli leaders, including Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who phoned Morawiecki to register his disgust. Netanyahu labelled the comments as unacceptable and insisted there was no basis for comparing the actions of Poles during the Holocaust to the Jews. Netanyahu added that the distortion regarding Poland could not be corrected by means of another distortion. Israeli President Reuven Rivlin described Morawiecki's remarks as a new low. To Poland now, where one of the country's government ministers has supported calls for a Polocaust museum to commemorate Poles killed by the Nazis during World War II. In the latest turn in the controversy surrounding Poland's new Holocaust law, Jaroslaw Salim said he supported the call, a move that could trigger yet more tension with Israel and the country's own Jewish community. Salim says the story of the estimated 1.9 million non-Jewish Poles who were murdered by the Nazi regime has not been well documented enough in current museums. Speaking on Poland's Radio 1, he said, "I think that the story of the fate of the Poles during World War II, in the first phase, the destruction of our country by the Nazis and Soviets, and the second phase, when our country was under total occupation, deserves to be told, and that the world should see this horrific loss. It is enough to read the official German documents from the time and Hitler's famous book to know that after the Jews, who Hitler wanted to completely annihilate from Europe, the second phase of this plan included the Slavs and especially Poles." Salim's comments came in a response to a suggestion made by writer and academic Marek Koken for what he had called a Polocaust museum to be built. While there is no indication that such a museum will be built, Salim believes where it would provide education for those he says are very ignorant of the suffering of the Poles. To health news. And according to a study published last week in the journal Neurology, simple walking tests can accurately diagnose a type of dementia that may sometimes be reversed when identified early and quickly treated. Idiopathic normal pressure, hydrocephalus, or INPH affects the walking ability and mobility of the elderly, with additional symptoms that include urinary urgency, incontinence, and in some cases mild cognitive impairment or dementia. Usually INPH goes undiagnosed because its symptoms mimic those of other neurological disorders. In particular, doctors confuse it with an incurable form of dementia known as progressive supranuclear palsy, or PSP, according to the German researchers. A series of experiments suggest that a simple walking exam can accurately distinguish INPH from PSP up to 97% of the time. Dr. Charlotte Selge, lead author of the study and an assistant physician in the neurological clinic Grossheiden at Ludwig Maximilian University in Munich, said, "Worldwide, the portion of the elderly is growing. This would inevitably go along with an increased total number of dementias and gait disorders. If older patients are routinely given walking tests, those with a reversible form of INPH might be identified and receive treatment early enough to overcome their illness." Past studies show that shunt surgery to divert cerebrospinal fluid effectively cures many patients. And in sport, after an absolute nail-biter of a match, which went to overtime and then a penalty shootout, the US has finally broken Canada's strange hold on women's Olympic hockey. Team USA won the shootout 3-2. The women in blue poured onto the ice after Canada couldn't reply. handing the Americans the gold. It was an incredibly close match throughout, with Canada leading 2-1 well into the third period, only for Team USA to pull it back, pushing the game into overtime. The US women's hockey team hadn't won gold since the 1998 Winter Olympics in Nagano, Japan, so tensions were even higher than usual against their regional rivals. Canada has won every gold medal since then, and Thursday's match was the third time the teams had met in an Olympic final. Ahead of the match, they had already played once in these Olympics. Canada won that preliminary round 2-1 despite being outshot by the Americans 45-23. And that's all for CYC News. A reminder that you can watch this news bulletin again throughout the week on YouTube. I'm Mira Gerges from the CYC studios in Sydney, Australia. Have a good night.